Welcome back to Hot Take, everybody. Today is going to be a really exciting one for me. It's a car I've wanted to check out for quite a while, actually. It is a 2004?
Yeah, 04.
BMW E46 330i ZHP. Different from the XI we did a while ago. This one has different cams, a little more power, different gearing. A couple little things. This is Andrew. You might remember him from his E36 328 track car we did last year. Andrew, tell us a little bit about this car.
So this is my $2,000 Stimmy package ZHP. So I bought this out of Philadelphia. I was supposed to go to Michigan State in August. Found it in April. Didn't need a car, but it was so cheap that I just had to have it. So bought it. A lot of things were wrong with it, but at this point, it's a nice running and driving car.
And with that, let's go ahead and take it out on the road and see how she drives. I'm gonna turn your lights on. That cool?
Yeah, everything works.
Oh yeah. Ooh, I like that. Okay. Oh yeah.
That's reverse.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot how smooth these cars drive. You can barely hear it. And the clutch is light, the shifters, it's light, but it's got a good mechanicalness and notchiness to it, ignoring the amount of play that there is in gear. Over these bumps, it rides really good. This is just a, there we go. Oh man, it's just a solid car. So you said this thing's pretty stock, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love stock BMW suspension. It's sporty enough, but it's over these bumps, like it's very supple.
Yeah. I think the snow tires help a little bit too.
Okay, yeah. So we're on snow. What snow tires are on here now?
The Nokian Hakkapelitas. So like not a performance snow. These are like true like Nordic snow tires made for going through like 6 inches of snow.
Right, because we're gonna go ice racing in this thing at one point, right?
It was supposed to go ice racing, but then Michigan got no snow at all, so
right.
That kind of sucked. And it was not a very cold winter, so no ice formed on the lakes.
Right. Now, when I went for the downshift from 5 to 4, I noticed that I had to kind of give it a fair, I had to give it a lot to blip it.
That's the dual mass. It's just a heavy boy. So.
Interesting. That feels like a lot more than even on like E36s.
No, my E36 was fairly similar with that dual mass. It's a heavy boy. So.
Yeah, there we go. Interesting. If I switch back, I'm gonna be so sad.
Yeah. Like again, I don't think lightweight flywheels are that big of an issue, unless you go to like a 10-pounder, like an 8-pounder. So,
right. And you start to get like the really chattery.
They just suck to drive because they're so light. There's no like inertia on those things that
right
easily stall. But like when you throw on like a 15 or 18-pound flywheel that most like eBay kids have, like they drive very well and like it revs up like quickly. It feels peppy.
Very smooth. Half throttle. So the car that this gets compared to, I think the most, other than other E46s, of course, is the, oh, my seatbelt just came undone.
Oh yeah, it does that.
Oh, wonderful.
It's very worn out.
The buckle.
Yeah, the buckle's pretty worn out, so like you gotta shimmy it around. Yeah, okay, you definitely got it clicked in.
That's in? Okay. Yeah. Was it not clicked in before? Was that
Probably not. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But you have to audibly hear it. It doesn't like click in when you push it very well.
This is the $2,000 ZHP, guys.
Yeah.
$2,000. Okay, so tell us the story about this car. How you came upon it, bought it, what it was like when you bought it.
Yeah. So once again, I was ready to come out to Michigan State for school, and this was and that started in August, and it was April time frame. So I really didn't need another third car. But just at work, searching Facebook Marketplace, and a 330 ZHP just pops up for $2,500. I send it to my like car friends like group chat, and they're like, "If this is real, you really gotta buy it." So I'm like, "Yeah, what the hell? Let me try it." Message the guy, "Yo, is this like a real price? It's in Philadelphia. I'm working in Philadelphia. It's literally 2 miles away."
Yeah.
So he goes, "Yeah. When do you want to check it out?" And I'm like, "Can you do like 30 minutes from now? I literally just need to walk over to where you are." And that happened, and I'm looking at the thing at this parking garage in the middle of Philadelphia, and there's just zero rust in like the common places. So the jack points are fine, the subframe's fine, like everything is just fine in the car. take it for a test drive, and I'm like, huh, it kind of drives a little funny. Anything between like 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock on the steering wheel doesn't do anything at all. But, I mean, it's a solid chassis for $2,000. Like, you really can't beat it.
Right, yeah, of course.
So, we make the deal, we settle on $2,000, and a couple days later, we decide to finish it up, get the title notarized and everything like that. That was like the first issue with trying to buy the car, because like no place in Philadelphia, this is during COVID, was really willing to do notaries like in person at that point. So it was really, so we went to like 3 different banks before finding like a UPS store to actually notarize this damn title. And that took like 2 hours of him and I just walking from place to place in Center City, Philadelphia to get this thing signed over.
That sucks.
Yeah. So like it ended up being like 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I finally got it on a weekend. And I'm like, okay, great, this is my car now. Let me finally take it for a proper test drive. Let me take it on the highway. So if you're familiar with Philadelphia, 495 runs straight through Philadelphia, but it's also extremely congested. But you could probably do like 60, 65 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So like the entrance ramp is completely open, so I'm like, all right, let me gas it. Let's see what this thing actually feels like. And like 25 miles an hour to 50, that thing felt fine. The motor felt fine. As soon as I got up to 55, the car just starts floating. And once again, 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, nothing happened to that steering wheel. And at this point, I'm coming into traffic, and I'm like, I don't even know if I can keep it in the lane at this point. And that's when I was like, oh my god, I'm going to die.
So this thing was, it was all over the place. It was bad.
It was bad.
Right now, it doesn't feel terrible.
Yeah, and I'll talk about like what I had to fix to get that. But like,
yeah.
Really, I'm doing 55 on 495 with cars on the left and right side of me, and like the car was in my name, but it didn't have plates on it, and it didn't have insurance on it, and it wasn't like legal at all. So I'm like, I really don't want to wreck this thing. But I get it back to my apartment, and I'm like, okay, I'll figure out how to trailer this thing back to my garage in New Jersey at some point later this week. So this thing just sits.
Right, okay. So, right, there's a little bit of a steering wheel wobble now when I brake. Is that just...
I think that's the rotors from sitting so long, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I didn't touch the brakes, the pads are like full.
Oh,
the rotors
okay.
are also pretty new.
Alright, we'll try a little bit of first gear here.
Yeah, run it through first and second.
Feel the clutch delay valve.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as a passenger, like, it feels alright.
The power delivery is so much smoother than on an E36 M3. And compared to an E46 330, this has the grunt that I think that car lacks, or the top end rather. Those cams, it pulls you straight to redline. The little bit of a shorter gearing, the extra power from the cams, I think really bring this thing alive.
Mm-hmm. Also, this has like dual vanos, so like,
right.
Whatever it's doing to the cams, it's working a lot better on the low end, but then it also has a chance to work on the high end too.
Wow. Oh man, I love the stock BMW suspension.
It's so smooth. It is great.
Ah, there's the downshift I wanted. So these get compared a lot to E36 M3s because the power to weight is similar. This is a little bit worse, but to 60, this car is actually 0.1 seconds faster, I believe. And I think a lot of that probably comes with the power band, the dual vanos and everything. This pulls the red line quicker than an E36 M3, I think, which is really interesting because it's down a little bit on power. You shouldn't think that it would. Maybe if I looked at a dyno graph, it would make sense as to why. Probably the intake manifold. It's a lot more refined than an E36 M3. I also do like the 6-gear edition. I think this is the GS6. Is this made by ZF?
Yeah, the GS would be a Getrag one though.
Is that, what is this then?
This is a ZF, which is like, ZF6, something like that.
ZF, okay.
ZF6, not GF. Because GF is definitely a Getrag one that we'd find on the E90s.
There's traction control.
Yeah. Like again, it's on snow tires, so like you will break traction fairly easily in this car.
Right. And these don't have an LSD, but
No.
I'm not pushing it that hard, but it still grips up plenty nicely.
Well, because the traction control is like cutting power way before the wheels will
You get
start.
a chance to...
Like when I turn it off and I try to like throw this thing around in the little snow this winter, the open diff like opens up right away, and it sucks trying to snow drift.
Okay.
Like, if I had all season, I think I'd be happier because it'd be less grip. But like with the snow tires in an open diff, it's finding grip in that one tire.
Right. So you said you had to do a lot to get this car kind of sorted out and running properly. What exactly did you have to replace in this car? $2,000 ZHP. Usually when they say you buy a cheap BMW, you put more than you paid for the car into it. Was that true with this thing?
So I'm fairly like low, like I have fairly low money into this right now. Like I probably have put $500 total into this thing, and it drives perfectly fine, and a lot of the bushings are brand new.
Oh yeah.
So anyways, like I said, the steering did not work from 11 to 1 o'clock. So that's the first thing I really wanted to like check out on this car. So I jacked it up. The previous owner told me that he's done one tie rod end, replaced the steering coupler, which is like on that steering shaft. And my thought was, okay, those are like pretty common things to replace. Maybe it's like the tie rod assembly is like the inner joints are bad, or maybe just the other tie rod is also shot.
Right.
I bring it to New Jersey, have my dad shimmy the wheel while I'm actually feeling around for anything loose, and I just couldn't feel anything loose. Like that steering rack felt completely fine.
Yeah.
So I'm looking under the car more, just looking at the new steering joint that he put in, and that's when I realized he like really messed it up.
Oh
so
no.
The steering joint, it goes in where like there's an unthreaded portion and then a threaded portion, and you're supposed to like put the bolt through the unthreaded side into the threaded side so it clamps on.
Right.
So when the previous owner did this one, he did it the wrong way. So the bolt went through the threaded portion and then went into the unthreaded portion. So the steering joint wasn't clamping on anything at all. So that's where all that play was. The really bad part though was that he stripped it out trying to tighten it more and more because of that play, that it was impossible to remove. So like I spent about like an hour just drilling out the bolt just so I can get the steering shaft off and free so we can put a new one on. There were some other like snags when I was doing this though, because I found out that in checking the inner like tie rod assemblies, I found out that the steering rack was leaking anyways, and like all the BMW guys talk about the yellow tag rack that ZHP had, it's worth its weight in gold. It's not that special because it's found on a lot of E46s, but
I think my buddy's XI has the yellow tag rack.
Exactly. So it's found on a lot of them. But I was lucky. There was a junker in Philadelphia that had a ZHP that was totaled, and I bought the rack off them for like $100, and that one was not leaking, and it came with a steering joint on it. So I just threw that entire rack onto this car, and boom, for $100 total, the thing was working fine and drove perfectly again.
Well, there you go. So, all in all, you said you sold the ZHP wheels that came to it.
Yeah.
Said that to me earlier. What dollar amount roughly are you into this car?
So, total amount probably like $2,500. So I'm really
like
not
net, yeah.
So like I've also did a lot of other things.
Right, you do for sure a lot of preventative things and whatever, just stuff to make it work.
Yeah, like if you consider this thing a track car, which is what it eventually will be, the oil pan was leaking pretty profusely, like all BMWs do.
Yeah.
So I did that, but when I was there, I safety wired the oil pump nut, so that's never going to come off. So that's a really good preventative thing on this car. And I also reinforced the front subframe because a lot of these cars, especially the E36, they like to crack the front subframe mounts because whenever you're torquing the engine and shifting hard, the metal's just too thin and fatigues. So like that on the front end is done, so most of it is good to go. I also found out like a lot of the suspension bushings in the rear were original. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Like the trailing arm bushings were original to 2004, whenever this car was made.
Oh, not
so,
good.
Like, the rear end was kind of like loosey-goosey also. Not as bad as the front, but still loosey-goosey.
Right.
So I replaced that. I replaced the ball joints on the rear trailing arm, so that's good. There's limiters on those rear trailing arm bushings, and then nothing else is seized in the back. So the rear end on this car is pretty planted, and I do have subframe bushings going in pretty soon, and that's going to go in with the subframe reinforcements that I'm
I feel the clutch delay valve. It almost feels like when you go in the gear, it smoothens out your shifts a lot, but it takes a second, almost like an automatic car with a torque converter, where you get that small second of slippage. That's almost kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, I think it's mostly for people who just kind of go on and off the clutch, and then it smooths it out a lot.
Yeah.
If you're used to kind of easing off the clutch, it makes you slip the clutch, and it makes the whole like shifting kind of.
You have to shift it faster with the delay valve in place.
Yeah.
You have to, because if you don't, then yeah, exactly what you just described. It kind of.
Yeah.
It doesn't shift as smoothly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thoroughly impressed with this. Oh, that is the universal killer of fun right there. We were talking about this earlier off camera, but the E36, when you get in it, you hop on the highway, it's hard to carry a conversation depending on the exhaust you have and everything. And even if you have stock exhaust, there's still a fair amount of wind noise because they're old, worn out. Yes, if you have a perfect E36, it's just as quiet as this car, but that is not the reality. And for some reason, this car is not that much newer. This car is like almost 20 years old, but for some reason the E46 has just held up way better. It held up way better than E36 did. We were going 80 on the way here. We were able to hold a conversation. Right now we're having a conversation this whole time, even when I was pulling the red line. You can't do that in E36. Now, part of that you might think is a good thing, because the E36 does feel a little more like an event to drive in that regard. But this drives, from a performance standpoint, just as good, and maybe it's a little slower. Honestly, just off a feel standpoint, I could not tell you. Like, they're extremely similar. But I think this is, as a vehicle and a complete package, this is definitely the better choice. The $10,000 ZHP is going to be, you're either going to have a really nice automatic or like a pretty good manual. The $10,000 E36 M3, you're either going to have an okay automatic or a manual that needs a lot of work. And honestly, like, when you put it that way, I think the ZHP just becomes a much better package. The LSD is one thing people complain about, but you can put LSDs in these things. I don't know if you looked into that.
Yeah, they're expensive.
Are they like what, $2,500?
$3 to $4 grand.
Oh, well, that does kind of take back your M3 savings there.
Yeah, if you had a DIY, you could probably get away with like $1,500 just for the unit. But
right.
Most people don't, and it's $3 to $4 grand just to buy like a pre-made one. I'm very gentle with my transmission. I never rip it through gears. We
Oh.
just like tap it in.
Like that?
Yeah. These things are always like slow transmissions.
We've now finished our test drive of the E46 330 ZHP. It was a very pleasant experience. As I say with most of the cars I drive, probably all of them, honestly, if I really looked at it. But I really like this car. It felt at home. It's very similar to my E36 M3 in a lot of ways, but it's just kind of modern in a lot of the areas where mine isn't, and it just kind of improves it in a lot of ways. I think overall, this car is just a much better experience. The only reason I think you should buy an E36 M3 over this is if you just either like the way they look more or just prefer the rawness, because you do lose a little bit of that with the more modern package. But nevertheless, that is just my opinion. Very pleasant experience. Thank you, Andrew, for having the car on the channel. It was very fun to drive. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I think you hit it on the head. Like, this is an E36, but better and more new.
Exactly. And with that, let's give it a score. Utility. The E46 chassis has enough space, decent backseat headroom, and a sizable trunk. It is also very comfortable, and wind noise is low for a car of its age and size, so it gets 5.5 out of 10. Features. The E46 has a lot going for it. Dual zone climate, heated seats, standard keyless entry, driver's information display, and more. However, it still gets outclassed by a lot of modern cars, so it gets 4 out of 10. MPG. The EPA rates the ZHP at 18 city, 27 highway for combined of 21. I can tell you from first-hand experience that those numbers are a bit low, but for the sake of fairness, it gets 5 out of 10. This totals our daily score to 14.5 out of 30. In the weekend categories, the cool factor. E46s have started gaining mainstream appeal in recent years, and this is one of the more desirable models. They never made an M3 sedan for this generation, so this is the closest you can get. It gets to 5.5 out of 10. Driver's feedback. The steering is responsive, the brake pedal feels good, and the shifter has a nice feedback. There is better and worse. Still gets a 5.5 out of 10. Acceleration. The ZHP does 0 to 60 in the high 5-second range, giving it a 5 out of 10. This totals our weekend category to 16 out of 30. Finally, should you buy it? I think in the classic BMW world, this is the best value around. The E46 3 Series is timeless. It has the perfect blend of modern tech with a bit of old car feel and a simple and understated package. And to top it all off, for only 10 grand, making it a bargain. It gets a 12 out of 15, putting it here on our list. Ironic that it beats out the M3. This car is not as fast or special as a track-focused M3, but is a lot more practical and certainly a better value. The E46 330i ZHP is a perfect all-arounder, while still retaining the comfort of a modern car. If you want something classic without being too compromising, I suggest you give the E46 330i ZHP a shot.